Kels shares about discovering they're neurodivergent.
So when I first got my diagnosis, so I'm an older student. I am returning for my second career. I am 40. I got my diagnosis at 38. It has helped me to understand my memories of things that were once really confusing in a way of like through a neurodiverse lens, through a non-binary lens. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, that makes sense. And it's deeply healing, but it is something that I'm still exploring too. So when I first found out, I was thinking back to all the times that I like would stop for gas and went in and paid and then like got back in my car and drove away, not filling up for gas. Or another time where I took cash out of the cash machine to go grocery shopping and took it out first, went and did all of my shopping, got to the checkout line and realized that I hadn't pulled it out of the ATM. And so it was there. I had just walked away. I thought I was just dumb. I just thought I was like a, dumb blonde ditzy kid. And it turns out no. And same things too with like time blindness, right? Like all of the things that were really important to me and that I couldn't seem to get done on time. And that I actually I suffered a lot of abuse for it. I cannot tell you how many times in my life I have asked the question, like, what is wrong with me? And whether it was just internally or not, or like just been really hard on myself because of being unkind mentally. When I was in high school, I was taking a test where a person sitting next to me had really bad postnasal drip and seasonal allergies. And it was a quiet room, right? But I couldn't concentrate on my test because at infrequent, unpredictable moments, there would just be these really loud body noises of this person next to me trying to control their allergies, right? And was I was irate. I was infuriated with him. And even in that moment, being like, he's not doing this on purpose. But I couldn't make my brain concentrate on anything else. And that was like, obviously, here we are all these years later, and I still can like picture that really perfectly. I think that was a really clear moment for me where I internalized it as, wow, I am a really mean person. And like I did poorly on a test because I was so angry with this person. And I have some serious issues, but I just didn't have the language or understanding. And now with the diagnosis, I'm like, oh, baby. Yeah. Okay. Right. Like, and now I have distraction free environments and I get to use my Bluetooth noise canceling headphones when I take tests. And it's like, ooh, it's another world and it's so wonderful. But that was one of those like real clear moments where I had no idea what was happening or why it was happening, but it was so bad that I was like, this isn't normal.
About how the neurodivergent brain works.
So if neurodiverse brains are always kind of relearning a process, then that means we're also still looking for efficiency and patterns. So that can look disruptive in spaces like a classroom or in maybe like an employee's town hall or something like that, when somebody is presenting and they present concepts that they're like, okay, so we've covered A through K and we're going to move on to J now. And if you are neurodiverse, then you're like, but what about this E? Do we really need E? Can we just skip right from D to F? I don't understand the point of E. And teachers and presenters are like, oh my God, why do you keep bringing this up? We have been through this. And neurotypicals are like, oh my God, this again. And for a neurodiverse brain, it's like, but I don't understand why we need this. My brain is relearning all of these steps. And your brain has been able to just accept A to K, right? Or A to J. So from teaching models to presentation models, a neurotypical brain will kind of do like, yes, I accept, and then they can do a critical thinking analysis about whether or not, about how they feel about that, or what their thoughts come to mind, or things like that. But what a lot of people don't know or understand fully is like how much our brains have to rework and relearn everything that got us to that new starting point. And if there is an inefficiency or just it's the need to understand why something is important that can seem so disruptive to authority, right? So teachers will get frustrated, parents will get frustrated, bosses will get frustrated because they think that you're challenging, when literally it's like, no, I can't make myself care about this unless I understand why it's important. People, neurotypicals who understand that and will give you that time and energy, typically tend to love you because they appreciate your curiosity, your enthusiasm, and how deeply you engage with the work. Neurodiverse people will sometimes go off on a tangent with you and you have to like work together to kind of rein it back in, right? But I think that is one of the things that, like, when you are masking to fit into a neurotypical world, a lot of it is pretending to understand and just accept things at face value, that the inner workings are like, does not compute, and I stopped listening because I'm still paying attention to this thing that doesn't make sense. But it is perceived as challenging, questioning authority, being unmanageable. I've had so many bosses that are like, you're so smart, I don't understand why this is so hard for you. That to me is like, yes, I am smart in a lot of very specific ways. And these types of issues are still forever going to be really hard for me. And that's kind of hard for them to accept, even when I know it about myself. This is just a different way of our brains working. It's only a disability under capitalism, in a system where there's not room for that, where there's not space for that to be different. Then it will continue to be a burden and viewed as a disability, and accommodations is kind of like an eye roll thing, because now it's something extra that's required, when it's like, or my brain just works differently and I can still contribute here. But there's a lot of demystifying and a lot of work to be done. And there are some spaces that that's getting better in, but there are so many spaces that it's just not even on the radar.
About being a neurodivergent student.
To be back in school kind of with this understanding, better understanding of myself, how I learn, that things actually do take me longer, and that it's actually is easier for other people. They don't just make it look that way. That has been really helpful in just being gentler with myself.
About resources and accommodations.
So I got connected with an app called Natural Reader. So I was getting a walkthrough from somebody at DRS. He was showing me how to use it. And like, okay, you can copy and paste this in, or if you get it in PDF, you can drag it in, right? Da, da, da. Oh, hey, and here's this really cool button up here. I just want to show you. And it's just this little button that says Dyslexia font. And literally, as soon as he opened the webpage, my eyes just focused on it and was like, oh no. Like my whole body was like, oh no, something's about to happen. And I was just like sitting with this discomfort while he's showing me these other things. But my whole brain focus is like, what does that button do? What am I about to learn from this button? What am I going to see when he clicks this button? And he was like, oh, no, let me just show you what this does. And he clicked the button, and it was like putting on glasses for the first time. I had no idea, because I had only ever conceived of dyslexia through the like typically like cis male an idea of it that's identified in young boys, right? Young cis boys. And there are 4 types. And so that just as it was like my eyes could rest while I was reading. And I love reading, but it really, that was probably one of the biggest, like most overwhelming relief and grief moments, was just thinking about how much harder it has always been and not knowing, and just that more than even my ADHD diagnosis was like so revelatory in just the ways that how would I have known differently? And it wasn't my job to know, right? I was a child, but I know now. And thank goodness I get to live the rest of my life with this better understanding and being able to better consume when my brain is so curious. Like I love learning. I loved reading so much and got away from it as an adult. And now I get to come back to it and it's deeply satisfying. The divergent mind was like I had to actually pause several times. My indexing, my bookmarks are like through the roof, really talking about a lost generation of women and femmes. And it is deeply thoughtful work, and it's based in a ton of research. It's really well written, and it is very, very well put together, and it blew me away. Also, the Dyslexic Advantage was another one of those. That those two books I basically want to like. I wish I could make every professor everywhere read them, because I think it would really help them to actually understand what's happening in their classrooms and how people put different ideas and concepts together. Like there's so many wonderful cues in there for neurotypical people as well. And so things that helped me understand myself and that I could point to say, hey, this would help me be better in this room, in this space with you. Can we meet on this? Glean is an app that UW uses that allows you to record and drag in like PDF presentations from lectures and things like that, so that you can record and like basically it's like a lightning round where if you space out and weren't listening to the last 5 minutes because you were thinking about this thing the professor said, you can just like press a key and it will put in a little timestamp that's what that means to you, right? So it's like a lightning bolt thing where it's like a questions and answers, a checkbox, or like if professor says this is going to be on the test, it's like an exclamation point, right? And so I can type in my notes while they're still speaking and not worry about what I'm missing, which is huge for me. I can be a little bit gentler with myself and know that I can go back and re-listen, re-enter my notes, or re-engage with the work. And it's not a like winner take all. However much you can extract from this 15-minute lecture is all that you get. Sorry, good luck, right? And for me, that has always been an issue of like taking notes and like, oh, that sounded really important, or I want to think about that some more. That really triggered something interesting for me. My brain stops listening because I'm trying to remember the thing that I'm writing down, right? And so to have the ability to actually go back and re-engage with it and update, complete, follow up on those notes, it's been a total game change, and I will ask for it forever. At the D Center, we have a room that is off the back of it that we keep very low lights. We have weighted blankets, we've got fidgets, and we've got couches and chairs. So it's over in the hub, it's up on the third floor, and it is usually pretty quiet and pretty low key. But that's one of the things we talk about, right? Is like the more people who know and come to access the space for that, then does that make it more inaccessible? But we won't know until people come and start giving us that feedback. And so I think a lot of people don't really even know we're there. It used to be in Mary Gates Hall. And also there's a lot of internalized stigma, right? Like if I show up in this space, am I going to be asked about whether or not I'm disabled or an ally, or right, if my disability isn't apparent, or even if it is, am I going to be asked questions about it and things like that? And that's something that we try to be really thoughtful about, and just like, no, we will never ask you about that stuff. We'll ask you maybe what we can do to make you more comfortable, right? Or how you're doing. But that we will never talk, like we were never going to prompt that from anyone. Um, but that is how I found that space. Was I was looking for a quiet one, and I popped in and no one was there, and the overhead lights were off, and it was all low lights and chill, and I was so relieved.
About navigating romantic relationships.
I really was looking for validation, approval, and love from other people because I didn't know how to make sense to give it to myself. And it doesn't matter how good your parents are when it comes to that. It doesn't matter how much support you have in your family nucleus, right? Or whatever, or your logical family, your friend family too. If you are looking for acceptance from without, then it is always going to be so much harder if you haven't figured out how to get it from within. And so I spent so much time masking. I spent so much time not letting people in. I was married by the time I got my diagnosis. And so it is a lot. It's really hard. And for folks out there who are going through it, like use it like practice, right? Like that sadly is what a lot of people are doing, but not practice with masking, practice with what are you looking for in this person that you aren't finding with yourself. Because that is trying to be everything to everyone is something that's very much socialized in femmes. And I think neurodivergent femmes are constantly bumping up against the the guardrails on the road and overcorrection and all of that stuff, because look, ask anybody how to be a woman in this culture, and it's basically just not like that. Whatever you're doing, it's just not like that, right? And so as a non-binary person, on top of that layer, it can be so confusing and so hard.
To friends, families, or teachers of neurodivergent people.
Don't make it about you. Make it about the person you love. Make it about the person you're working with. There's a lot of defensiveness that can come up with learning about ways that you have hurt people in the past. And that is a way of making it about you. And so if we're focusing on the needs of this person who is entrusting you, disclosing this with you, listen to their feedback and take it for what it is, but also recognize that behavioral disruptions are not an issue with behavior. It's an issue with like sensory experience a lot of the time. It's needs not being met. So if you can apply the filter of how can I meet this person's needs, you will not only have a friend for life, right? You will have the devotion of somebody who feels seen when in spaces they're not usually seen, but you also can apply that in ways that will help so many other people who don't know what they're dealing with. So I would say read those two books, read The Dyslexic Advantage, read The Neurodivergent Mind, or The Divergent Mind, sorry, and really listen and really educate yourself. Don't burden the person in your life with educating you. Do that work on your own and believe them.